Welcome to Goddess on the Rise. I'm your host, Sarah Brookberg, Ayurveda practitioner and coach of literally all the things, helping women connect to their mind and body. This is your space for real, raw, and authentic as fuck conversations on healing, embodiment, and rising into your power. So get cozy, grab your mineral mocktails, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. Yay. All right. Welcome to Goddess on the Rise. I have my very first guest of really like this new revamped show. And it is one of literally my bestest friends in the entire world, Miss Harrie, Queen
Hello.
herself. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I am so pleased to be here and I'm honored to be first. I I'm so
Absolutely.
happy that I'm your first.
Harrie and me, how long do we even go back, honestly? Like, how long have we been friends on the socials?
I think it's crazy because I don't think it's very long. I would only go back, like properly talking, I would go back maybe a year or two,
Yeah,
if that. But I just feel like if we
yeah,
haven't sent each other 55 voice messages a day, then we're like, where are they? Like, where is
yeah,
she?
yeah.
I miss
So
you.
me and Harry, somehow, some way, we found each other on Instagram
Mm.
and we started following each other. And then like we are both posting and we're both like, here and there sending each other messages. And I don't know like how it really took off. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
You
You
do?
came
Okay.
out with like your new, like you came out with some new branding like
Uh-huh.
last year or
Oh
something, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
like bang. And
Yeah.
I messaged you like you are not here to play. Like you
Yes. Yes, I
you
remember
just
that.
came out on fire, and I was
That
like,
was 2 years ago.
okay,
That
so that
was
was
two
it.
years ago.
You
Yes.
came out on absolute fire, and then I messaged you like, whoa, like
Yeah.
you had entered the chat big style, and no one was going to ignore you. And then somewhere along the line there
Yeah.
was like a some kind of chat or something about chronic illness and existing in the fat body, and then
Yeah.
you came to like a little group Zoom thing that we were doing,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, I
then yeah,
remember.
you came with like your chronic
Yes.
illness background, and that's kind of what then kicked it off, and then from then we've just been inseparable.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So Harry is all the way across the seas in the Netherlands, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm
And
English.
yes, trying to get out my geography and being like, okay, where's Harry?
Yeah, but it's also funny because you go like, yeah, I'm from England, and they're like London, and you're like, no,
No.
like somewhere in the middle of England,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're like where, and I'm like, you probably wouldn't even know it. So there's
You
no
have
point.
no clue where it's at.
No, although actually my reference is always, do you have Worcestershire sauce? And then people
Huh?
will say, yes, we do, and I'm like, I'm from there. Like
I'm from
that's where we made that sauce. That is where I live. So
That is
my
so
claim to
funny.
fame is like living where they made and invented that sauce. So yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm all for it. We've just been talking. We talk like almost every single day. And if we don't talk, we're like, yep, something's up. We know something's going on.
Yeah.
We're the bestest of friends. So I'm so grateful she's here today. She is a breath of fresh air, as you can see. Oh my gosh, if you're not watching this on YouTube, what are you even doing with your life? Because this is Harry's claim to fame. She is a YouTube star. She showed up and showed
I
out.
came up to be YouTube famous
Yeah.
and I came with Sarah's branding in mind. So
Yeah.
I was here with the pink. I was here with the
Look at how beautiful she is though. Like her lip color, her ring. Show the ring. Oh, show the ring. It's so cute. Look at that. Be mine. Don't mind if I do, Harry. And I showed up like this because life is lifing right now. Poor
But
Briar.
I think that is probably one of the best visual representations
Mhm.
for the topic that we're covering today, right?
Literally, oh
Because
my gosh.
yesterday I was not like this.
Uh-huh.
This morning I was not like this. Like it is now what 8 o'clock or something in the evening for me. It's the
Right.
morning for you.
Yeah.
And at your time in the day, I was looking like not like this.
Right.
And yet tomorrow, like I had the energy, I had the capacity today to put some makeup on, to do my hair, to paint my nails. But yet tomorrow, that story might be very different. And I feel
Yes.
like
Yeah.
it's so important to actually be happy with both, like to accept both and not to
Yeah.
feel like we got on the call, well, I'm like, do you want me to underdress? Or like you're,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're both there comparing, but actually we have to just accept like the an honor
Uh-huh.
that we can do that when we can,
Yes.
because we never know when we're going to get that again. Like
Yeah.
I haven't put makeup on and done my hair in weeks, months,
Right.
and I might not be able to do that again for weeks or months. So like being able to do that in that moment
Yeah.
is just incredible.
I think when you said like, oh, it's so fitting for today, I was like, yeah, it really is because it kind of like leads us into the topic of what we're talking about
Yeah.
today. And it's something that like Harry has been talking about on the online space for a hot minute and pretty much the same with me. But first I forgot, let me introduce you. So this is Harry. She does all the things and I'll let you kind of take over and tell your little side of things here because
Thank
it's
you.
amazing.
Yeah, so if I was giving a one-liner, it would be, Hi, I'm Harry. I'm a self-love coach for life, love, and business. But within that, I mean, what even is self-love, right? And throughout the past 5 years, I think I've had, especially 5 years, the last five, especially with COVID, I think I've really had to get a grasp. I think the universe is kind of testing me with like, oh, like, do you really believe this though? Do you really believe this? Because I've gone from existing in a fat body, but everything else kind of being okay,
Mhm.
to then losing my dad, to then getting a chronic illness, to then um I have, for anybody watching, I have a scar on my lip. I was bitten in the face by a dog, and at every stage was like, oh, so now you've lost someone. So do you still believe in like self-love, self-care, self-belief?
Mhm.
Oh, like, do you still believe in your business? And I'm like, yes. And then they're like, oh, okay, how about, having a chronic illness where they tell you it's terminal and you're probably going to die? And then they're like, do you still believe in it? And I'm like, yes. I was like literally in hospital, still working. And then I come out of that. And then just as I'm kind of feeling a little bit better, I get bitten in the face by a dog. And you're like, oh no, your face is scarred. And I had like a big scratch down my face. And it's like, do you still believe? It's like
Right.
just a constant test from the universe.
Hmm.
And in those moments, I feel like we always have two options. We can say, okay, yeah, I've reached my limit now. Like, I don't,
Hmm.
maybe this isn't the right step for me. This isn't the right path for me. Or you can say, actually, I can't, like, this is way beyond me.
Hmm.
This is something that was given to me, not something that I've necessarily chosen.
Right.
And when you feel like it's your life's purpose that you've been put here to do that,
Hmm.
even, the fact that you might die is not going to take that away from you.
Yeah.
Um, and you have in that moment the chance of, do you actually want to carry on? Like, do you have enough fight in you to carry on living? Or are you going to just allow the universe, yourself, whatever, to just give up?
Right.
And so that's where I come in, because
Yeah.
I do the helping you pick yourself back up,
Hmm.
helping you get back on track. There's no, I might not make the biggest stages in the world. You might not see me on billboards, but it's those like the work that we do that's invisible. The same for you. the work that we do, that we show up every day for people that are just trying to live, they're just trying to exist.
Mhm.
And I feel like before we go any further, I just want to give a shout out actually to anybody that is going through chronic illness,
Mhm.
anybody that exists in a marginalized body of any sort, and just congratulate them and celebrate them for
Mhm.
being a total badass.
Yeah.
Because I get it. I know what it's like. We both know what it's like to show up every day, to carry on going,
Mhm.
to have, a life that we used to have and a life that we have now, and to carry on showing up every day for that life, even though it's maybe not one that we chose or that we would choose. And if we had a choice, maybe we would want our old one back or want something different. And so, yeah, if you're listening to this right now and you're going through something, I just want to celebrate you and just say, we get it. And we're so freaking proud of you
Yeah.
because, yeah, you're still showing up and you're still doing all the things when I know how easy it is to just want to give up or just lie on the sofa and just try and forget that there isn't a whole world out there passing us by.
Yeah. And I feel like even like the heavy part of it too, is like the fact that they're still here. Like we're still here. I know you know this. I know this. It's like the depths of it, the despair of it. It can be scary and it can feel really, really, really lonely. And, you know, like you had said, like you want that old body back or like that old whatever back. And it's like y- you're just you're almost like missing out on so much of life. And it leads you to some dark thoughts sometimes. And so if you're here, if you're listening, like my heart goes out to you. I know Harry's heart goes out to you. And it's just, yeah, we're happy you're here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Harry, we guys get used to seeing Harry around here because we have over like 100 million things to talk about. We're yappers. We love to talk. Harry before this said like she's always been into like microphones, and it cracked me up because like same. In fact, I think like 2 years ago on our family vacation, I bought like this pink microphone and you could do like karaoke with it, like whatever you want. So I was driving my family crazy in the house because I was like whipping it out everywhere. And then my nephew was like taking it too. So like we're like battling with each other, like, no, give me the microphone. And he's like, but TT, what the heck? And it's such a thing. Give us a microphone and we're not gonna be shy. And so that's definitely gonna be the case for Miss Harry coming up on the show. But today we kind of narrowed it down. We're talking about something I feel like it's so near and dear to our hearts. And I want to say, like, for me, why this is so important, I don't think I share this with you, Harry, like, why I finally landed on this is because I know I have a lot of listeners who are definitely chronic illness or in marginalized bodies or in that space. And like, of course, it's always going to be for them, truly. But this is also for the people who just don't quite get it. They just can't wrap their head around it. They see a fat person and they're like, oh, they're promoting obesity, right? And how many times have you been told that, like on the internet, right? And how many times I've been told that so many times, like me existing in my body, me just showing up, loving myself, and telling other women to love themselves is somehow promoting obesity, which let me debunk that. It doesn't make sense, right? Because no one is actually trying to get fat. No one's trying to get fat. And I actually was going to share this with you, Harry, the other day, and I totally forgot. But I wrote something. Your fat, disabled friends aren't promoting obesity by simply existing. They are simply asking for you to see them as a human being and give them the basic respect and dignity they deserve. And it's
Wow,
like, yeah, yeah.
that's
And then I,
powerful.
yeah,
That
thanks.
gave me
And
chills.
seriously though, it's like we just want to be treated with respect. And I see comments all the time. It's like, well, lose weight. And I'm like, for what purpose? To make you
Yeah.
feel better?
Yeah.
And I continued it on. I said, we're not stupid. We see the way you look at us and the way you wince when we say the word fat. Like I've called myself fat in front of my friends and they're always trying to, oh, you're not fat, you're not fat. I'm like, it's not a bad word. Hold up. It's
Oh,
okay.
no, you're beautiful.
I did obviously, like I am beautiful and I am fat. Both can
Yeah.
exist, So, um, yeah, that it's it's heavy on my heart because as I start the podcast back up, I had a lot of listeners before that were from my hometown. And I'm seeing this like crazy epidemic in my hometown of women on Ozempic getting scary thin and sharing that on social media. And like, it is not their fault. It's definitely a society thing, and I understand it. And also, it's sad and it's heartbreaking, and there's so many layers to that, but it's not the story for everyone, right? And so I wanted this today's podcast to really talk about being fat, being an ally for someone who's fat, dealing with chronic illness in a marginalized body, and how different that looks. And I think part of that is obviously, Harry, you sharing your story, and what has looked like for you, and then talking about something amazing that you have done. You completely pulled out of thin air, and it's been the most beautiful thing I got to read in a long time. So I want to give the floor to you, and I want you to just kind of take it from there.
Okay. So there's a lot there,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that obviously we could probably talk about this for days, weeks, and not stop talking about it. The one thing I think that really hit me is I was doing some research for that piece that you were just talking about that I've created that you
Mhm.
read the other day. And I went back, there was a newspaper article um, way back from the 1970s, end of the 60s, I think. And they were talking about fat rights.
Mhm.
And it was two husbands, sorry, their names are totally gone out of my head, who both had fat wives, and they were so sick of seeing how they were being treated
Oh
that
wow.
they wanted to do something about it. The first
Oh,
one was a piece of media, so it was in the newspaper, and then the other one kind of joined on board and they started what we now know as the NAAFA. Um, and it was a piece in the newspaper, and honestly, reading it, they could have just written it today. And that made me so sad because this fixation on bodies,
hmm
this fixation on how we're meant to look, is just as prevalent today as it was
yeah,
in 1960. And
yeah.
if anybody thinks that we've got any further forward,
Oh my gosh.
we haven't. We're absolutely kidding
Well,
ourselves.
and we know this, right? We know we haven't because the diet industry is like in the billions now. It's worth
Yeah.
billions now. And also like we in 2020, I feel like we were seeing a little bit more of a trend of like the body positivity movement really gaining traction. And then I feel like we've taken about 100 steps back now. It's like what is it? Especially with like Ozempic on the rise, that did not help.
Yeah.
It really didn't help, but we've really taken a step back for sure.
And I feel like I had a conversation with somebody online the other day, and we basically went round in circles, and they weren't able to answer my question because the key thing that everyone keeps saying at the moment, which ties in so nicely with this whole illness side of it,
Mhm.
is somebody had commented. It was basically someone saying, "I'm just going to live my life, and if you don't like it,
Mhm.
like tough. I'm just in a bigger body, and like this is just it. Like,
Yeah.
just get over it." And someone had commented, like, as long as you're healthy, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I see this all the time.
hmm
I don't think anybody ever looks beyond today. I'm sure I'm like sometimes I feel like I'm in an alternate universe because I have a niece and a nephew.
Hmm.
So in my head, when I make choices, when I'm looking at how the world is, how I want to shape the world, how I want to be part of the world, I look at them.
Hmm.
I don't see them day to day. They're in a different country to me, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, what am I creating? What am I leaving behind for them? And just like it felt sad to me to leave something behind from the 60s to now and like not see a change and them still be talking about exactly the same things, which is just basically to have equal rights. Like we're not, it's not anything special. It's just to be treated the same as
Yeah.
somebody in a smaller body.
Right.
It seems really wild to me that we're saying to people, as long as you're healthy, like what does that mean? And my
Yeah.
question to them, which they couldn't answer, was, what are you saying to somebody that isn't? So if I say to you, as long as you're healthy,
Hmm.
and obviously you reply with, well, I'm not. Like I have a chronic illness. I'm not
I'm never gonna
healthy.
be like quote unquote
No,
healthy. That doesn't make sense,
no.
right?
You're never going to have that.
Yeah.
And you didn't get that because you were fat.
Yeah.
Got
No.
that because
Had it
of
before I was
something.
fat,
Yeah.
right?
Otherwise, if we reverse that, because a lot of people say, well, I was a psychologist first, like I have a degree in psychology. So I always flip it.
Hmm.
So if we're saying that all fat people are unhealthy or that they're going to be unhealthy or that that's what they're leading to, then we have to look at the variation. And if we flip that, then we end up in a situation where any thin person or every thin person would
Hmm.
therefore not have a single ill health or disease or anything
Right.
because it's only a thing that fat people have.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people, if we flipped it, would say, well, no, of course there's people that are in hospital right now who are thin or in a straight size body.
Right.
Of course, my uncle, my gran, my daughter has cancer or diabetes and they're not fat.
Hmm.
So if we can understand and we can accept that, then we
Hmm.
have to be able to understand and accept the opposite, which
Hmm.
is that every single person that's in a fat body is not unhealthy. And if we shout out to the world, okay, you're fine, we'll allow you to exist in the world without harm, without comments, without prejudice, as long as you are healthy, then what are we saying to the people now
Hmm.
who aren't? The people like you and I, the people that are listening. What are we saying about people that are in a disabled body or they're in a wheelchair or they have any kind of body, um, you know, difference to us. So they may be missing a limb or, what are we then saying to those people? And what are we saying to our future generations? Especially with what you said about the weight loss drugs. We know it is a fact, it's not up for debate that they are not a good idea. They're not a healthy idea.
Hmm.
They can cause stomach issues, they can cause thyroid issues. At best, if you're lucky, it will cause you to lose muscle mass
Think it's there
on
was
a
like
number on a scale.
40%. Yeah, a 40% um muscle mass drop immediately. And just like one fact, like one big thing that you're seeing is like a lot of people like, oh, well, now I have no appetite. So, but I'm losing weight, so I'm just gonna kind of do whatever I want. So I've seen like I've this is like a big trend, right? All these, not all, but a lot are just like drinking a whole bunch of energy drinks, like one or two a day. Picking at a little bit of meals, having a little pasta, calling it good or having a dessert. I heard another woman actually talk about this, and she was like, "Well, I can barely eat anything, so I might as well just drink my calories." And is having like wine and whiskeys and nightcaps and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, all in the name of health, though, right? Like,
Yeah, I listened to something recently where somebody was saying they could only eat burgers,
yeah.
beef burgers. That was the only thing they could hold down. So again, if we're saying like every time we see someone in a fat body, we're critiquing the fact that they're having a burger.
Mm-hmm.
But we now have a person that's losing weight
Mm-hmm.
or now thin or in a straight size body being
Mm-hmm.
celebrated for the fact that they're eating burgers all day. Like, again,
It doesn't make sense.
no, you can't have both. You
Right.
have to choose.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the issue comes in because I I was listening to something the other day. It was in the UK, we have a program called, I think it was 24 Hours in A&E, and they brought in a young girl and they started off they always do like a little side interview with the mom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom said, my daughter, when she was 10, 11, had she was weighed at school
Mm-hmm.
and she was told, the child was, that she was on the high end, like the top end, before she was about to become overweight.
Oh, jeez.
At that point, obviously, she then wanted to go on a diet
Yep.
because she didn't want to be the 10-year-old, 11-year-old girl that, was seen as the overweight girl. People were making comments because they told them in front of the whole class. So people were then commenting on her body and on her weight and on this
Mm-hmm.
figure. Until then, she was fine. She was then in hospital on a weekly, monthly, daily basis because she immediately hadn't got an eating disorder
Mm-hmm.
because she stopped eating altogether.
Yep.
And she was taking laxatives and doing all kinds of things to combat the fact that she'd been told that she was supposedly, let's not even get started on the BMI today. Please go do your own research about that because
It's a
all
five
I'm going
minute
to
Google
say
search. Like,
all I'm going to say is I am not an average man from the 1800s. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, I'm not an average white man from the 1800s. So this is not for me. Like, the BMI is not for me. And that's all I'm going to say. Um, but if they hadn't have told her that, she most likely would have just been a 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl just enjoying her life. And instead of that, she became a girl that was just refusing. Her mom was having to take her in because she would not eat for days because she was so petrified that she might, you know, go over this imaginary scale from an astrologer in the 1800s. Like, it's so crazy that we do that. And so now,
we handed her trauma and an eating
yeah,
disorder on a silver platter. And all of those like people that were all of her classmates that are saying those things, they're only saying it because they heard it from their parents or
yeah,
from some sort of outside source.
exactly. And so, like, have we left her in a better place now?
No.
The fact she's fighting for her life every day and she doesn't even understand. She didn't want to be left in the hospital, and they were saying, we're going to have to put you on a drip and we're going to have to feed, you're going to have food through your veins.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want that. Like, and she didn't even realize what it was doing to her. They interviewed her afterwards. It's been years now. And they interviewed her, and she said, I had no idea what I was doing to myself because she's a child. She's 10.
Yeah.
Like, but we are setting children, not just girls, but boys too. We are just setting them up
Hmm.
for this absolutely bizarre failure
Hmm.
based on I I don't even know at this point based on what.
Well,
I don't even know.
yeah, I think there's layers to this, right, too. And I think that this is like I feel like just right now, like this is a call to action. Like we need to wake the fuck up because if you like, oh gosh, it's just heartbreaking. First of all, that girl now she's gonna have tons of trauma she has to work through. She's gonna have body image issues. She's gonna have an eating disorder, not to mention what it's done to her body. We've probably just created chronic illness, hands down. I know
Yeah,
that sounds so crazy to say, but more and more research is coming out showing that nervous system regulation, childhood trauma, all these pieces are linked to chronic illness. And
yeah,
with her not having the repair, she's got a major rupture. No repair is going to happen, really, because they don't know what they're doing. And so, because of that, she's going to have this cycle over and over and over and over and over again. And it's going to wreak havoc on her body, probably for the rest of her life, unless she gets
Well,
proper health and
they
help.
said she they couldn't get her the mental help that she needed because they don't have the resources. And
Hmm.
then one of the staff that they were interviewing said, "Oh, this we're seeing a lot of it. We're seeing girls really young, 9, 10, even younger, coming in, and we're seeing so many of them coming in with eating disorders, and we don't know why." And I had this
Oh
moment
my God. Like, what do you
where
mean?
I was
Don't
like,
know why?
cuckoo. Like, what? You started this section
Yeah.
saying she was weighed in school.
Yeah. In front
We
of her
know what the link
peers.
is. If you want to stop it happening to kids, stop weighing them.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, most of them don't buy the food anyway, right?
Right.
So
What are they
I
gonna do
I
about
still
it?
remember turning around to my dad. There was one thing that I could never understand because I grew up fat. I was a fat kid. I was always, even into my teens and my adulthood, I was still like, I don't know, what would you call it, mothered? I was still policed. Should you be eating that? You've had enough. You don't need any more. Drink some water, have an apple, all those kind of things that we were told growing up.
Hmm.
And I just remember thinking, my dad would say like, "Oh, you need to lose some weight or you need to do this." And I would have this moment where I was just like, you're buying the food. You're giving me the portion.
Hmm.
Like you're not happy now with how it's turned out, with
Hmm.
how I've turned out and how I look. But this was given by you. Like
Right. Right.
like you didn't know the portion sizes.
Make it make
But
sense.
also we had my sister and I had the same and we have two very different bodies.
Mhm.
So trying to think, my dad actually turned around to me in my early 30s and said, "I've seen what you've been eating. Is that all you're eating?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because I was living at home for a brief time with them." And he was like, "Are you eating outside? Like, are you having extra meals? Are you hiding stuff in your room? Or is that just what you're eating?" And I was like, "Yeah, everything you've seen me eat is what I eat in a day." And I think for the first time, he actually realized my body is just different.
Hmm.
It's not unhealthy. It's not like I'm not sat around all day doing whatever people accuse us of sitting around doing. My
Hmm.
body is just different. It just works for you differently. So he was eating the same as, or more than me. He was seeing what I had, but actually my body responds to it in a different way. And
Hmm.
it's just different.
Yeah.
Just like my sister had the same and her body is different. She was very athletic built and I just wasn't. Mine was all my weight was all in my tummy. I had stick arms and legs and it was all in my center part of my body.
Right.
My sister
Right.
had really chunky thighs and bigger arms and then was like very athletic and slim. And yet we ate the same. We were together. Like we were in the same household eating the same food. So I think to just look at it as it's bad is so ignorant.
Hmm.
I don't have
Yeah.
another word for it.
I think this is like it's a very, very common thing. And so one thing that this reminds me of too is like correlation versus causation, right? So that's like the biggest lesson I feel like, or like the biggest thing that people just don't understand. Like they'll be like, well, obesity leads to all these health issues. And it's like, okay, first off, but it doesn't cause them. Okay, like there is a correlation, just like there's a correlation in many different things, right? Endocrine disruptors, so like perfumes that you use can um there's a correlation between that and like endocrine issues, right? Like that makes sense. But are you saying that a perfume causes that? No. No, that doesn't make sense, right? And so the other
One
piece,
of my favorite ones while you're on
uh
that is
yeah.
um apparently more. more men who are bold have heart attacks. And this isn't to scare anybody if you're
Mhm.
bold, but like, does that mean that all bold people are going to have a heart attack?
Right.
Because it's more likely. Like,
Yeah.
they're not, they don't shout about the other things. You don't see on the news every day, if you're bold, you're going to have a heart attack.
Right.
But they'll quite happily tell you if you're any of the O words that you're going to have diabetes, for
Right.
example.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, and so I mean, I know you can relate to this. This is something I can relate to too. I think I've shared my story on here before, probably way 100 episodes back. But one of the things that I had always talked about was the fact that I feel like I was handed my eating disorder too, like on a silver platter by my father as well. It's like the little comments that was always made and things that were done. And I think it's just something that we, you know, moving forward with like the next generations and the kids that you have at home, we have to be more aware of. Like your kids right now are seeing you take this Ozempic. They're seeing what it's doing. They're seeing how you talk about your body, how you pull on your clothes. And for most children, like the mom and their dad, like they look up to them. They're like, I want to be like you one day, and they're watching you diet. And if you don't think for 1 second that that is not going to affect them, I'm so sorry, but that is not reality. It's not
I saw
reality.
a video the other day, like a reel, and a woman was in the kitchen
Mhm.
injecting herself with her son right next to her, and he must have been maybe 6, and he's just looking into the camera but seeing her inject herself. And I thought, I know so many friends who say like, oh, they remember like in our generation, it was the Special K
Yeah.
diet. I still remember my mom going on that, and she ended up going to the doctors because she couldn't understand why she was passing out, and
Mhm.
when they were like, well, you just had like 2 bowls of cereal all day or something, and you're a mom, like
Yeah.
you're running around all day and you just had a bowl of cereal, like what are you expecting here? And she immediately stopped. But I know
Yeah.
a lot of friends and family who their parents didn't just stop. They
Hmm.
did one after another, after another, after another.
Hmm.
And obviously then that meant that that set the standard then for them. They went on the diets too, or
Hmm.
even unbeknownst to them, like we said before, if you're cooking the meals, you're handing out the diet, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um,
And this isn't to like, and I want to be really clear, this is not to like shame anyone. Like, I 100% get it. I mean, I was in an MLM for years, and I know I have completely done harm by that. You can go back and listen to some of my early episodes of this podcast. They're still up, and I was in that space because I did not know better. But once I knew better, I did better. I got the education that I needed for these types of things and to better understand and read scientific journals and articles and all the things. But I truly thought that what I was doing was okay and safe and in the name of health. And it came with like a level of judgment, right, that I was placing on people. And I'm wondering if, we can kind of chat about that a little bit, like the next level of I feel like it's like fat liberation and fat allyship even too. I know this is something so big that you're doing. And I want to say again, this is not to shame anyone. This is for the people that are wanting to know better and do better and um have empathy and love and want to understand. And then also for those who are dealing with this and want to be seen, heard, and validated, which you guys all know is like my top theme in my coaching and on this podcast, keeping it real, raw, and authentic as fuck. And sometimes we just can't sugarcoat things. And if it stings a little bit, I hope it gives you like just a crack in the window or maybe unlocks a window that you can kind of look through a little bit. Or maybe it's just you looking back in a mirror, just kind of being like, oh, I can do better here. And I'm saying this with all the love in the world. It's not to slap you across the face. Although I will say Harry's very good at doing that to me. She just grabs me and she's like, "Listen here, you will rest."
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah, a bit of tough
yeah,
love
yeah,
sometimes goes a long way.
yeah.
And yeah, actually, I would totally agree with what you just said. Like, I get it.
Hmm.
We've been there. I've
Yeah,
been there.
yeah.
I would never, like, nobody ever wakes up thinking, I want to be so ridiculously fat today or
Hmm.
tomorrow. Like, I can't wait to be like really fat. Like, nobody does that.
Hmm.
And it's probably worth mentioning at the moment. Obviously, both of us are using that word.
Uh-huh.
And I know that, and I appreciate that some people won't like that.
Yeah.
They prefer, plus size or chubby or curvy or whatever. And if the word fat makes you feel some way, and you're listening right now, kind of doing a little shudder, um, I would ask you to lean into it.
Hmm.
Because one of the best things you can ever do, like when I reclaimed it and someone said, like, oh, you're
Hmm.
fat, I was like, I know.
Yeah.
Like, and there was just a moment where that was just taken away. Like
Yeah.
that weaponization of a word.
Uh-huh.
When you say, I know, just like if someone said you're tall and you're like, yeah, I know I
Yeah.
am. I
It's a
know I'm tall.
description. It
Yeah.
And we are putting power behind that word, right? We are,
Yeah.
as a society, right? And as we hear it, we make it a bad word. And that is
Yeah.
simply because that's what they want. That's how they make money, right? Like if we're thinking
Can you
we're
imagine if
fat,
we all decided tomorrow
yeah.
and then like all the Slimming Worlds and Weight Watchers or
Uh-huh.
whatever just had to shut down because
Uh-huh.
no one went anymore because they thought, well, this is, we don't need that.
Yeah.
And then all the other diet programs and whatever, we were like, we don't need that.
Uh-huh.
And then all this, lose so many inches in 2 days or whatever. We didn't
Uh-huh.
need that because we just moved for joy and we
Uh-huh.
ate for pleasure or for need.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
overnight they'd be like, oh, like,
Yeah.
where's all our money?
Yeah. Um, I have two things. One, I forgot. One thing I wanted to say. I hear this a lot too when we were talking about that 10-year-old girl. Um, the biggest thing that is harmful that leads to disease is not actually like the obesity, it's the yo-yo dieting. When we yo-yo dieting, that is so much more harmful than staying at a very consistent weight.
Yeah.
So just one thing to kind of like keep in mind with that. And then the other piece of that was I just had forgot to mention that. What we were just talking about now. It's uh like they've put so much power behind fat and like making it sound like it's bad and like we're lazy and we don't do things when I know that well, like my functional medicine dietitian who I work with, who is a thin person and a thin body, and this is a very common thing, she's like, you are under eating. And I know a lot of people that I work with, a lot of my clientele, almost all of them are under eating. We truly don't know how to eat. We're never taught that because we're always taught diets, right? Yeah.
When you're in it. So I feel like now we're out of it. Now we're out of diet culture. Now
Yes.
we're in body acceptance, body neutrality, fat
Yeah. Very
acceptance, whatever
neutral.
it is that
Yeah.
we want to call it. Once you're out of it, you're out. You can't close that box again. You
Yeah.
can't shut it back down. You can't go back in there. That you're out and you can see it and it's there.
Right.